our gateway game of the week this week, which was Azul, which was brand new to me again. And out of all of the gateway games we've played so far, this one's the one I think I cottoned onto the quickest, right? Mm-hmm. Which may sound a bit weird, but if I'm the litmus test as to how quickly a game can be learnt, this would be one of the ones where I found, maybe outside of Gansha and Clever, that I understood the concept. I got the rules pretty quickly. Couple of little niggly bits of just where Alfred pointed out, hey, that was probably not the smartest decision there, which was very kind of him.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to...
I'm being serious. It was very kind.
It was on the first move of the game, and then it was like maybe on the
and then about
first round of
I'm not having a go. It was very kind of you to say, hey, that was a dumb move. There's a better option for you. I wasn't paying attention to anyone else's board at all.
Do you want to explain what the game is for people who haven't played Azul?
All right, I'll give it a go.
Give it a go.
So, we're in Portugal, I believe.
Yeah, Portuguese, yeah.
Man, all right. Off to a flying start so far.
It's killing
Stay with us. I promise you it's a good game. Stay with us. I promise you it's a good game. I promise.
We're not in Germany. We're in Portugal, okay?
Well, colourful.
Very colourful. It's we're building a tile deck, I suppose. It's a courtyard. Portuguese wall out of 5 different style of tiles. We take it in turns to select from a group of what are called factories, where there's spots that we can choose one of 4 tiles or one style of tile from that factory, and they're just randomly drawn from a bag. And then whatever we don't choose out of that style goes into a centralized pot for everyone to pick from. And we've got to build up this wall bit by bit. On your board, you've got the ability to place a style of tile in either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 locations, and you have to have that number of tiles to complete a row. And then we're just filling up our board, essentially. But there are a couple of interesting rules about how you fill up your wall. So you don't go straight to the wall. We go to almost a holding area first. You've got to fill that holding area up first. You can't place on the wall until you've completed a line. Mm-hmm. And if you select more tiles than you have space for, you lose points. Well, the thing I actually quite liked about it, other than the usual colour and tactility of things, was once I'd gotten onto, all right, there is a little bit of strategy here. Once again, falling back into that gateway game, it's not overly competitive. Didn't feel like I was really trying to screw anyone over at first. I'm sure you could play the game that way, but once again, it's probably to your own detriment to play balls to the walls. I'm gonna go out to knife someone.
Well, I actually did a move in this game that just sort of knifed Anthony a little
bit.
Twice did it, was it?
Yeah, it was twice.
And Ned took a couple of actions where I was like, well, that stuffs me up. So it's not it's not completely cooperative or anything, but it's not solitaire, but it isn't, as I said, it's not a knife in the back kind of game. So
yeah, I love Azul. Like it looks very pretty, it feels very pretty because it's like that tactile tiles. But I've played this with my mum, my niece and nephew. That they all picked it up really quickly, and we all just had an enjoyable time with it.
Yeah, I really like it too. I mean, I'm only relatively new to it. I've only played it a couple of times on Board Game Arena. This is the first time that I've actually played it in person. Azul kind of made a lot of headway when it came out in 2017, 5 years ago, for 2 reasons. One, it was very colourful and very unique. Nothing had really had this kind of style of Portuguese backdrop, very colourful kind of hex shapes. It almost reminds me of like a kitchen splashback sort of thing.
That's exactly what it is.
It is.
My sister's got they got a forno, which is like an Italian pizza oven in the backyard. And the back of that is Portuguese tiles, and it looks pretty much exactly like this.
Okay, so it's
really
basically that kind of style. So that's what reminds me of that. So, but what really set it apart was it was one of the first games that really used these high quality, almost like they're not ceramic.
They kind of look like Starburst.
Yeah, they like Starburst size, but they kind of feel like ceramic, but they're not ceramic. It's like that really high quality plastic. So when you hold onto these things, they've got a bit of weight. You can put them on the board.
Easy to set up. Like the actual,
very easy.
There wasn't a lot really to worry about.
All the tiles are in a bag, so you just pull them out of the bag, and that's your randomize.
And this might be another conversation for another podcast of ours, but my copy of the game is actually a counterfeit copy.
Oh, is it?
So you looking at it and playing it, you wouldn't notice, but some of the tiles, like the they're off print.
Right.
And that's the sign that it's actually a counterfeit version.
Right. Okay.
But like,
wouldn't have noticed.
You wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was once again sticking to our overarching theme of the podcast. As far as gateway games go, this is certainly a good one.
Yeah.
Once again, it's not too simple, but it's something that I think a lot of people would look at from a distance, right? So when we talked about games that are scary to look at when they're all set up and go, oh, there's too much going on here, I don't think it's that at all. But it's also not one that's so simple that you'd think, well, why am I wasting my time with this little flimsy game, right? It's kind of mid-range there.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go.
Sorry, this game actually for quite a while was my gaming group's warm-up game. Just like while we're waiting for that one extra person to show up, we'll whip this out because like you can play it within 20 minutes even. And it's so funny playing this with serious strategic thinkers of a board gamer, because they take like a good couple of minutes to take their turn, and I just like took 30 seconds, not even, sometimes instantly, to take my tile because I knew I was going to lose that game, and somehow I won it, and that was still my most memorable game of this.
It has a few things where, especially with the first game, so we played this game in about 35 minutes, including the teach, so it played really quickly. And it is really simple. There are a few of the decisions came down to, would it be better for me to take a couple of loss of points here, or is it just take some other things? So I really like what you kind of touched on, Matt, the style of game where it's not direct confrontation, but it's about the efficiency of, taking the first place. So if you take from the center pile, so every time you take from one of the 6 locations around the center, you take one style of tile, as you said, and then you push the other ones in, creating a bigger and bigger stockpile from ones that you can take. Now, at some point, you're going to hit a critical mass where you're like, I really want those ones that group from in the center because that'll help me build up the 5 or so. But if you're the first one to do that, you take the first player token, which is great because you get the first turn next round. However, you lose 1 point for doing that. So you have to weigh up when is it worth it. However, what ended up happening was, Matt, he came second, you beat me by a point, but we both lost to Ralph by about 30, 25 or 28 or so. But we realized that in this game,
shockers.
Yeah, you had to take the biggest pile of like 8 tiles because that was what was remaining, which ended up meaning you lost 14 to 15 points in one.
Right at the beginning of the game, you had like a -6 points, right? You took this -6 point. I'm like, oh, that must suck, right?
It does suck.
And then I've gotten 2 in a row of -14. I'm like, well, no, that really sucks.
Yeah, that did really suck. But like that's what ended up happening is I realized thinking back on it, which is Ralph took the first player token a lot, which meant that you kind of got left with the dregs a lot of the time based on towards the end of the rounds. And that's where the confrontation, which is, it sometimes would be better to take the -1 point to make sure you get first pick and get all the best stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you'll be left with the crap. And that's kind of what ended up happening here.
It's the type of game that meta opens up at different player counts as well. With my wife, we were playing on the train on Board Game Arena, and she will purposely take tiles to block me all the time, and I will do the same to her. So the meta does change quite a bit.
Yep.
And I also just want to point out, we're talking just like the original Azul. There's since been like 4 reiterations from the same
Azul,
publisher.
Summer Pavilion, Azul, Autumn.
Is it all the same base game, but just different styles, or
they all play extremely differently?
Wow. Okay.
They unveiled a new one, I believe, at Gen Con just last week. So there's a lot of hype around that. I've played Summer Pavilion. It's okay.
Most people say Azul is still the best.
Azul is still the original. Azul is still the best one. But I
mean, that's the same with a lot of things, not just board games, where you fall in love with one style, and the I'm assuming the styling of the game. I'm sure probably colours and tiles and things
it looks
change,
very pretty. Yeah.
But the base game that you fell in love with hasn't changed so much. It's just got a new, fresh coat of paint or a different outlook at things. You still love that original game. It's hard to beat that.
Yeah.
But that'll be interesting to actually, for another maybe a Sunday where we actually play 3 or 4 of the same game but in different iterations and then rate them against each other, right? What we liked and how,
that could be cool.
If we could see how games developed and things like that. But I comparing it even to King Domino, right? In that same style of when do you take your turn and which piece do you take for this round, but then also next round, I suppose. And I didn't. I think I only took the first player token
once or twice
at the most. and that was to my detriment at the end. But first game, and I had no idea really what I was doing in that sense. But I really did like it. I'd come back to it.
Yeah, so that's a more relaxing game. Well, they're both relaxing games in a way. But
Yeah.
Well, look, and again, the general consensus is that this is a really highly loved game. I mean, we've mentioned BGG ranks quite a bit on this episode, but I think it gives you a good idea of, like, there's over 25,000 registered board games now that have a rank on the board game rating system, and this one is now is ranked 65. So it's people for being, and it's got a weight of 1.75 out of 5, right? So it's such an easy game, but it has a lot of depth to it because it does matter when you take some things, but also not even just the depth to it. It's just people like putting it in front of people. People really rate putting Azul in front of people for the colors, and I think, I don't own it, and I haven't owned because I was like, Ralph's got it, he'll bring it, we'll play it. But again, I've got a wish list of like things and get my Gameology like account where I just go and see what's there because I'm monitoring prices. Azul has been sitting there for 6 months. Targi has been sitting there for like 6 months as well. I'm like going, when do I pull the trigger? And I still don't know if I will, but only because I've seen it in some local gaming stores where I'm like, maybe I'll just go buy it from there and support the friendly local game stores. So yeah, is there anything else you guys want to say about Azul?
Well, just comparing it to another game, Sagrada, right? Which
what's Sagrada?
So Sagrada's in a similar style where you're taking tiles, but they're panes of glass, and you're actually filling up a stained glass window. But the difference, I suppose, in the game, I would probably rate Sagrada as probably the next level up in terms of complexity because it changes every time you play.
So because you're also using dice, and the pip value of the dice also changes.
Obviously,
things.
different mechanisms, but you're not playing the same board every time. And so there's 20, 24 different cards.
Yeah.
You actually pick which card you want, and they have different difficulty ratings as well. So the higher difficulty gives you more points, but is harder to fill. And the way that the game in Sagrada works is that there are 9 dice chosen from a bag. There's 5 different coloured dice, and I think there's something like 90 miniature
so
dice,
many
right?
dice in that bag.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And then one of those dice technically becomes your timer, right? You play until I think it's 8 rounds from memory. I can't remember, but in order, you'd say first player chooses first and 8th, and second and 7th, etc., etc.
Right. So it's like a snake draft sort of thing.
That's
like
right.
It goes up and then comes back
down.
Yeah, so high priority. Yep.
So you get first pick of which dice you want, but you also then would get the
dregs.
last pick, and you've got to place a dice.
Yeah.
And at the end of the game is when you've run out of dice. You don't necessarily have to fill everything. If you don't place a dice, you lose a point. And there are other rules that actually match it up. So that every game plays differently. There may be a rule that says in a vertical row you've got to have 4 different colours, or in a horizontal row you have to have all 5 different colours, or you may play a game where nothing orthogonally can be touching of the same value or same colour and stuff like that.
And I think that's the main difference is those objectives.
Yeah,
I love
objectives change it.
Where you have like a clear path as to what you want to do. That varies all the time.
But every time I've played Sagrada, which has mostly been at the Goobercons, as I said, I've never played it all out, right? I usually pull a couple of cards back in just because the people who play it are my mum and auntie and stuff like that who aren't gamers but are attracted to the colours.
And the theme pulls them in stained glass windows.
Yeah, that's right. The theme pulls them in.
Yeah.
But I think that Azul would be a good comparison to that game, right? As I said, like next year, maybe we bring out Azul for those people instead.
Yeah.
It's like, cool, let's get this underway and then kind of migrate to upwards to Sagrada and throw in a couple extra rules.
Because the mechanics are a little bit similar where you're picking something and putting it down. So I could definitely see the comparison there. I would love to play Sagrada at some point. I've only played the solo version of it, which is still pretty good. Azul doesn't have a solo version, so that's 1 point to Sagrada.